Alright, so welcome to your week 5 video notes. Today we're going to be adding and subtracting polynomials. This is exactly what you're covering in your Algebra 1 class. Now with that being said, keep in mind the new grading policy. If you guys want to, upload your Algebra 1 notes to this assignment. So when I post this video, you know how you guys have to turn in your copy of your notes? Just turn in a copy of your notes that you use for Algebra 1 and you will receive full points. Again, we talked about this with all the support teachers and we thought that we were kind of giving you guys more work than necessary. You guys are taking two sets of notes that are covering the exact same thing. So with that being said, do not feel like you have to watch the rest of this video to learn the same thing. Now, if you're struggling or if you want to see a second explanation, please go ahead and watch the video. Make your notes, turn them in, you're going to get full points. As long as we know you're doing your work, you're going to get your full points. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's start with adding and subtracting polynomials. So usually when you add two polynomials, they're going to have them in parentheses. And when you subtract them, they're also going to have them in parentheses. Now you have to watch out when you're subtracting them because there's a little tricky step that you have to make sure to do. Once we get to that problem, we'll cover it. Let's just go over the first one. So you are adding two polynomials. My first suggestion is to always distribute what's in front of the parentheses. Now notice there's nothing to distribute, so I'm really just going to ignore these parentheses and rewrite it over exactly the way it is. Now notice that what is there to distribute in front of these parentheses? It is just a plus. But what happens when you distribute a plus? Nothing really changes. So whenever there's a plus in front of parentheses, I just, again, ignore those parentheses and just rewrite it without them. Now, this is the part that you have to be able to do. You could combine like terms. The terms are like are the ones with the exact same variable with the exact same exponent. So for instance, notice that you have 11x here. Is there another term that just has an x? Yes, it's that -5 here. So what I like to do is I like to circle the ones I'm concentrating to add, and I like to add them. So 11x minus 5x combined exactly the way it is would be 6x. After I combine those like terms, I cross them out. Now notice you have a -x squared. Is there another term that has just an x squared? Yes, it's right over here. And that is a -1x squared and a +2x squared. And again, you're combining these, so you're adding them. What is -1 plus 2? Well, -1 plus 2 is a +1. So you get a +1x squared. You don't really need to write the 1 because 1 is unnecessary, right? After I combine them, I cross them out. Notice whatever's left is just 13 and a -23. They don't have any x's, so I can combine those right away. 13 plus a -23, because notice that subtraction negative are the same thing, the one right here, is a -10. So then that means that I am done. Now you have added them, but keep in mind that you have to put these in standard form. Now what is standard form? You have to look at each term. The term with the biggest exponent to its variable is the one that needs to go first. So notice that this one has an x to the 1, this one has an x squared, and this one doesn't even have an x. So the x squared has to go first, then the +6x, and then the -10. So again, standard form is just putting that in that specific order. Alright, so you're doing the same thing with subtraction. The only difference is this little step that I'm going to highlight in a second. Notice that we don't have anything to distribute, so I'm just going to rewrite it over. Now notice that we do have something to distribute here. We have a negative. Now when we distribute a negative, it changes the signs. Because anything times a negative is going to be the opposite sign. So negative times 7x is a -7x. A negative times a +3x squared is a -3x squared. Negative times a +1 is a -1. So that is the only tricky part to these problems, but everything else is exactly the same. Notice you have an 4x squared. Is there another term that has an x squared? And yes, it's a -3x squared. 4x squared and -3x squared is a +1x squared. I'm going to cross them out just because I combined them, just to kind of make it look cleaner. A +5x minus 7x, well, those are like terms, so I can combine those, and I would end up with a -2x, because +5 minus 7 is a -2. Don't forget your x. Now keep in mind that this -1 has just been watching, so it gets just to be hanging out there. And is this in standard form? Yes, because my x squared term goes first, my x to the 1, and without my x, so that means I'm done there. Alright, so attempt these two problems, press pause. I'm just going to go for it and go for it and do it. Nothing to distribute, so I'm going to drop my parentheses, leave x plus 5. Notice that there is something to distribute, but it's just a positive, so I'm going to end up with a positive 4x minus 7. So exactly the same thing, just without the parentheses. Now combining my terms, I can see that I have a x and a 4x. X plus 4x is 5x. And notice I'm left with a positive 5 and a negative 7. Positive 5 plus a negative 7 is a negative 2. So 5x minus 2 is the solution. Alright, now looking at this one, nothing distributed in front of these parentheses, so it's going to be k squared minus 4k plus 7. Nothing distributed here. Technically it is a plus. Remember, when you have a plus, there's nothing that really changes, so I just drop my parentheses. And now I can combine long terms. Clearly I see a k squared and a k squared. K squared plus k squared gives me 2k squared, so 2k squared. I have a negative 4k and a positive 9k. Negative 4k plus 9k would give me a positive 5k. And now I can just see I have my 7 plus a negative 3, or 7 minus 3, which is a positive 4. This is already in standard form, so that means that I am done. So those are your guys' video notes. Again, quick reminder that you do not have to take these notes and turn them in. You can turn in your Algebra 1 notes and still get full points.